Now, a big part of why I took a trade here was also because of the zombie trade with the pink algorithm. Now, I talked about how 640, you wait for the macro cup to close, and therefore you were waiting for some zombie trade here. Now, if you were to be taking puts here, you allow the control algorithm, which is a line that's trending down. Now, if your stops are horizontal levels and you have a line that's trending down, you have some certainty of keeping your trade protected. Now, this is somewhat lucky, isn't it, that we had a big red candle. But otherwise, if it started trending down in that pink algorithm, it will still be generally protected. Now, I protected my trade here at 300%, closed more than half, and that spread is practically free. I can wait for the charts to head down, free contracts on the house. And so this is how you need to learn how to be playing some very strategic move right here. Now, it's for this. Now, remember, I mentioned about waiting for another pink algorithm when the cup closes. I worry about sellers here, isn't it? And you see it for yourself now when the magenta, look at this penny perfect here from the magenta. You have to understand the magenta can still be a bear flag here, and this is why I mentioned you have to wait for some sort of structure here. The key supports are that yellow 636 and 5-day moving average, and so this is why you have to be patient, wait for the cups to close before we have magenta tapering. Tapering takes time. Remember, the sellers need time to offload their positions, so you have to pay close attention to this. And at the same time, you are also waiting for some sort of structure here to see whether it's the pink or the magenta that's in control. The center of the range is also what we call liquidity building, so you just have to be very mindful. Now take a look here, isn't it? You see how the pink is building up support on this level here. So just allow it. Don't be over trading in such a small range, isn't it? You see the ranges here. If this wants to break out, if this wants to break out, you have plenty of risk rewards. And because you have space, you have lots of rewards for the charts to head out. So don't over trade this at the meantime. Now you see the pink algorithm here building liquidity. This is a very dangerous setup here. Now we want it to go long here. You have to be very careful and understand where is the buying continuation structure, or in this case, which algorithm is guiding the buying. Now I charted this late, this orange here. And if you would have waited for the green, now this would have been ideal. So if you took a trade here near to the magenta, this may be a good trade here. Now, personally, I would not have taken any trades here, even though there was a clear structure. But if you wanted to take a trade, you have to understand, in this case, you're taking calls, isn't it? You need to understand where your supports are so you can place your stops. Now, you would have seen that the magenta would be quite clear right here, and we're waiting for the green or orange to appear. Red candles here, I may take calls here, maybe, right? And you see, you have green, you're protected in time, and thereafter your runners can be allowed to run in this orange as you nurture it. Now, personally, I would not have taken this trade. I would have waited for perhaps maybe this clearer structure breaking out of the magenta there. But if you wanted to, you have to understand, at the end of the day, it's all about risk rewards. You have a very clear support level here. This red candle appeared. You had a good fill. You can take your calls with very tight stops. In this case, you may have got lucky with the green appearing. Take some profits here, and you can maintain it all the way in the orange. But the question is this: how can you manage a 0 day to expiry for more than half an hour in this grind up. And especially if you are a little bit out of the money, this would bring you nowhere. So you just have to be more mindful about what kinds of trades you're taking. And in this case, I may just want to wait for more pullback and to take a trade from there. So it's quite simple, even though there is structure. You have to understand some trades you just do not participate too heavily in. And if you want to, you could scale down on this trade. It's a beautiful structure. You see how penny perfect once again. Now remember, I talked about this. Yeah, if you wanted to take puts, you could also have managed it well. And if you're trading the ES, for example, it would have broke out several candles before it even challenged your stops. So you see the beauty of taking a zombie trade, especially when you see clear algorithms trending down in this case, and you took a zombie here. You probably already protected at some key levels aggressively. Once there are key red candles here, you would have already protected this. So this would have been still small profits even if you took puts right here while waiting for perhaps a stronger inverse head or a possible dump right there while the market is selling in this pink algorithm here. So at this point, you have to understand where we at, understand the control algorithms, and understand the precision algorithms right there. Buying continuation, this is the handle that's controlled by the pink, and we previously closed the cup here. So quite straightforward here, understanding the context. Now remember, I mentioned if this wants to dump, just wait for magenta. It will taper. We have a midpoint magenta liquidity here. You will not miss it if it wants to dump. So just set alerts, go enjoy yourself. And remember, if you want to participate in 0 day to expiry, 1 hour here, this is extremely dangerous. Usually, if you want to scale up, you completely avoid grind ups or chops like that of my trade right here. That's important you understand. You see how the market was trending up in that orange, and we lacked that continuation structure, isn't it? Buying continuation. Ideally, you would wait for more bullish control before it starts heading up. So once it starts heading up in that green, now this is where it's important. You either chase this or know that it's going to head down because of a rejection. And in this case, it started breaking out and returned back to that orange. Now this makes my trading decision so much easier. Once it heads back to the orange, I know that there is a pink. And remember, I talked about this. If you are taking a zombie trade, and in this case, you're shorting this, you can trend it down to pink. Because if it is the bulls that want to build liquidity, it still has to trend down and build that inverse head and shoulder pattern, isn't it? So a trending down line, when you short it, your stops can be respected much better. Or in this case, because I am using the orange as a guide, I am using my orange and this pink as my stops here. So my stops are placed very nicely on these two algorithms and trying to play this failed continuation before it starts heading down to grab this liquidity. As you see, it's happening now, and also waiting for magenta liquidity to be grabbed. A big part of that as well is identifying this magenta early. You see, identifying this magenta early here, it truly helps knowing that there's confirmation of this magenta liquidity that's trying to grab now. Beautiful. That we identified the magenta quite early on, isn't it? So all you had to do, wait for that selling continuation. Now the stronger one was in blue, but you noticed that it started selling in the teal. So be it, just wait. And if you draw parallels with my analysis, so please do that, right? As I explain this, you draw parallels from the end of day summary right here. It's quite important you do that. So at that point here, you see that selling continuation here, and wait for that structure to form. You see how the magenta started forming. There was an early magenta break here, yes, and we lack the selling continuation. So you could take a zombie trade, absolutely possible, but otherwise wait for that magenta to start forming again. You see, you will not miss out even after waiting for about 1.5 hours. You see that the market will eventually return with a possible setup for you. So just set alerts and go enjoy your life, especially not over trading this. Many of you will blow your accounts trading this here, right? Ups and downs, sure. On hindsight, you can see and say that you can find profits there, large candles, but we're not after large candles. We're after imbalances. We're after finding profits in the charts. So in this case here, you understand what's going on, and I want to show you something very important from the top here. And this is important. You need to understand, how does a nested structure work? Now, I told you to wait for a nested structure, isn't it? And you see it happening right there. A part of a nested structure is when you see that the buying was in that orange. You see that orange here, and then it started becoming magenta. You see the magenta here. So you see that the buying has weakened from that orange, which is a stronger angle here, into the magenta. This is what you call that nested structure right there, right from orange to magenta. This is why you use the algorithms to understand that the strength of the selling has been controlled and is stronger right now. And all you have to do now is to wait for that selling continuation. In this case, we broke out of that with the stronger blue. Right now, when you understand this, you can see this even better. Now, I had an entry here. You see here and here, right? Okay, it's the same thing. You see the buying was in orange, and then we started forming that nested structure right there because the buying was suddenly controlled by this magenta here. So when you see the magenta bounce and you see magenta controlling the top of the range, you get ready for the right shoulder. In this case, the right shoulder here, I made several entries. I want to show you that, right? One of my entries was, if I'm not wrong, I took it at the break here. Now, taking a break is not exactly great. Why? Because I don't know where exactly my secondary stop loss will be. In this case, of course, I place my stop loss where the magenta is. It's still a very tight stop loss, but you don't have a safeguard on this stop loss. So in this case, yes, I protected it, great. But you notice my second entry was even better because I took it near to the teal, and I think I paid even less, right? I think this was 830, yeah, and I took another 830 right there with more confirmation. You see, I didn't miss out. So you see, you can always take it at a better price with more confirmation. This was my second entry, and I took it this time even better confirmation because I have the teal and I have the magenta as my stops. I padded this, and the market gave me a very big candle to protect my trade. And I had to protect here. Why? Because we already saw the pink that's building the liquidity. And next thing that happened was that we started trending up that magenta. Now, remember what I talked about. When the bears want to control the price, they trend it up because more people want to sell at a higher price. So even the buyers, they do not mind selling it at a higher price. This is why price trends up before it heads down. So this is known as building liquidity. Trends up the magenta, and sure, you can base your stops on magenta, but because this is trending up, your stops will always be creeping up. It's a very dangerous endeavor if you're trying to short this on a trend up. So you have to short this when it's showing some confirmation it's coming down. And I took another trade here. If I'm not wrong, it's at 1038. Right there. Once I had the rejection, and this was important, I had the rejection confirmation from magenta, and I saw the teal started to form. And there I have my bigger confirmation using the teal selling precision algorithm as my stop share. And just take a look. I took this at $8.40. This was at 8.20, this was at 8.30, and this was at 8.40. You noticed I bought it almost all at the same price. And which trade entry is best? You tell me. it's one with more confirmation. So you can always afford to wait for more confirmation, get a better fill. There is no need to try to catch the break, to try to catch the move. There will always be a move ahead that you can be prepared for. And in this case, this one went all the way down, I think, to $13, but I closed it about 10.90 right here. So study this trade, please. I think I have it here. This trade here, right at 13 August at 2 p.m. I posted this. So please study this. This is the trade right here. Very importantly, you understand some concepts on confirmation, right? And understanding this magenta was important because just take a look near end of day. Penny perfect. There is still a possible trade here I want to talk about, right? So you see that, well, we now technically closed the gap. We didn't have stronger selling continuation. Talked about that in the daily video. And you see how once we broke out of that pink in that cup here, this was a large red candle. Now, some of you want to catch the break here and go long. Now, instead of going long here, if you had the idea of going long, you know that magenta is controlling the price. Instead of going long here, why don't you put it at the back of your head, tell yourself that you're going long, but once this red candle appears, you're ready to go long. Would you go long at that red candle? If you wouldn't go long at that red candle, then you have no confidence in the structure. You have no idea what's going on here. Now, in this case, if you wanted to go long with more confirmation, you would wait for that break out from that pink algorithm again. Now, if you were to chart this more diligently, you would see that this was actually controlled by teal, and you had that pink algorithm right there as well. So there are two entry points here and here that you could have possibly protected, seeing that beautiful handle from that break of that pink once we closed the larger cup. And this was exactly what I was talking about as well. So if you had intentions to go long, you would have went long on that red candle or long here and here, knowing your risks. Now, if you went long on that red candle, where's your stops? You know that there's a magenta here controlling the liquidity. You went long here, your stops will be at magenta. Isn't this great risk to rewards? And only because if you thought several steps ahead, knowing you broke out of that pink, knowing that you saw that teal building liquidity, you could wait for confirmation here or add more runners here after protecting, or you could have just entered here. So you see, when you chain your plays, when you prepare ahead, and preparing ahead is extremely important, because how are you going to make a decision within that 1 minute? You cannot make that decision there and then. You've already made a decision several hours ago, and this just helps you in confirming a decision because you wanted to buy here for expensive. Maybe your price was $5 here, and now it went on a deep discount at $2. Would you get it? Absolutely. So understand the idea of planning ahead and not worrying about missing a trade. This happens. You have your stops here. It's pretty good. This stop can be an afterthought, no problem. You took your calls here, you waited out. If this stops after the magenta because you knew that a magenta can be grabbing liquidity here, you get stopped out, fine. That's fine. Look at your risk to rewards in this case. So you have to understand how to be planning ahead, and this is why planning ahead is so important, and having algorithms that are, well, almost penny perfect really helps in your trading decision, because you can prepare and know exactly what you're waiting for right there. Explanation about my trade. Yeah, now it's important you understand that we didn't have very clear buying continuation right there, right? We saw the teal, yes, build liquidity. I was avoiding going long. There was just isn't very good structure right here, and we were tapering with that orange, and occasionally you see how the magenta was, or what we identified and how it was preventing the resistance right there. Now, this was important because once we started breaking out here, I pointed out there was liquidity with the magenta algorithm here, right? So I talked about this magenta algorithm, and I mentioned about this particular it didn't show the pattern. So once we had that rejection here, this was when I took my trade, isn't it? You see how the head started forming. This was great because I had the teal and the magenta as my stop loss target right here as well. So this was pretty good trade here. Very good trade you could take as well would be at the rejection of that orange. Once we return back to the orange, you see there was also a possible zombie trade, right? You were waiting for the possible bull flag as well as the rejection of range. So this was a good zombie, especially once we sold in that green and then thereafter teal. So your stops will always be managed because it's always trending down. So you would have managed this zombie quite well as well. So instead of chasing the long, right, many of you would have been trying to chase this because you thought you missed out. But if there's no structure, remember, there is no trade. Another trade right here. If you understand what I was trying to explain earlier on the magenta, and you see how we started selling in that green. The green precision algorithm was evident as some form of selling. Now at this point here, you noticed that we had the orange in control here as well. Now, I also mentioned that you do not go long until you break out of that teal algorithm right there. So if you wanted to reload here, right, you obviously do not reload your puts at this chop here. You don't. There is a magenta that's not yet tested. And if you were to open puts here, where are your risk to reward? And this is why you see that there is this large bounce here. And once we started chopping here, very clear resistances, isn't it? Once you had that magenta and that teal, you know that your stops can be placed above them. And once we started selling, you notice the selling started in that green. Now, however, there was a much clearer rejection. And then I think I took, once I saw the teal started forming, and thereafter that green. So it was easy for me to manage my risks. Up to here, you have to protect. Once we grabbed the liquidity here and retested magenta, we lacked that continuation, isn't it? So if I had any runners, I would wait for them to be stopped out by the magenta as it rebuilt liquidity here. If the market or the bears want to grab the liquidity, this can absolutely happen. And we broke out of teal for the first time today and in a very strong blue algorithm here. So if you wanted to catch this trade here, because it's the first time we broke out of it, and you see the blue precision algorithm, which was buying up all morning here, you could still manage an entry here with good risk management with the blue algorithm right there. But otherwise, I mentioned wait for the cup to close, especially near that yellow 640, and you noticed that we started penny perfect at that pink algorithm, and just wait. Absolutely just wait here. Wait for the liquidity to start building. It didn't even retest your pink algorithm until it started retesting it again, breaking out of that pink. And you noticed if you chart it diligently, you notice it's also a very strong buying algorithm here, guiding that breakout and basing it off that 644. So please study my trade. I had a series of trades here, and in this trade there are 2 times that I had a 100% trade, and I manage my risk quite carefully here, understanding how to protect your runners, especially if they are still out of the money. And in this case, I based my stops where the pink algorithm is, and obviously that 644 penny perfect again. So understanding the structure here, what to wait for, even if you miss this, there's still opportunities. And you notice I don't need too much movement, half a point, and that's 100% trade right there. So you have to learn how to be finding profits in the charts, and in this case throughout the entire day you see how much profit there can be found if you do not overtrade this, or even if you missed some of the big moves like this one. I missed this one. That's fine. Wait for structure and knowing where the bearish liquidity is, where the bullish liquidity is, and that's the wedge that we were waiting out for. But in this case the wedge structure was so much clearer because of this handle. Yeah, all because we identified the pink and the teal algorithm. So don't forget to review end of day summary, and you have better understanding of what I was talking about throughout the day. A bit about your trade entries on this cup and handle here, right? Now it's important, you need to understand two very important concepts. Now the first concept is understanding the dual algorithms, and in this case you need to see that we were selling in that stronger teal. Stronger teal is great, right? If it starts to sell in the green, for example, which you had, and attempt to grab the liquidity here with the same green, then yes, it's heading down. But you see it starts to taper here with the pink, especially right here and in here again. So you know that this means that the bulls have controlled the selling, and the control is now stronger on the bullish end. Then secondly, you have to pay close attention. Where is the liquidity? I talked about the 644 yellow here, and you already saw the pink algorithm building that liquidity right here. This is the bullish liquidity from the pink algorithm, absolutely beautifully at that 644 yellow. So the dual algorithms here beautifully forming that handle that we were waiting out for as part of the structure, isn't it? And where will your entry be? Your entry must come in understanding the break of the algorithms, the grabbing of the liquidity, and the presence of a strong precision algorithm for you to base your stops on. In this case, on the break here, 644 tight, especially when we were mostly inside candles. It's not too hard to manage your risks in that case. If you're taking this and understanding this, you can take a simple trade here. And as I explained earlier, 100% trade right there. Quite straightforward context and your structure, understanding your liquidity, and in this case understanding the selling is controlled with the dual algorithms right there. Friday's action right here. Now, if you are watching this video at this time, you would have realized that the earlier part of the week, something like that happened, and I'd explain as well. So this was my early candle trade, and the identification of two dual algorithms in this case, right? Even in very tight spaces, you could tell, and primarily also because of this teal algorithm that helped me open my trade here. Now, likewise, as I was explaining in the earlier part of this video, in the earlier days of the week, you see it's trending down, and we had a stronger green. So this was a simple entry for early candles. So there are certain techniques when you're trading early candles, and it's pretty similar to the larger structure, but just in this case you have to be more sensitive to the candle movement, understanding and charting mentally where the algorithms are, in this case seeing it this way instead of this main primary algorithm, magenta algorithm here, right? So visually I was mentally charting these two lines and understanding the teal and the green going down. So beautiful first trade today, but You missed nothing even if you didn't catch that, because thereafter you saw how magenta was just controlling the range, isn't it? And more than just that, you also saw how the blue started controlling the range. Extremely tight here. Now I talked about an entry here, right? So even if you missed this, right, this broke the magenta right here. Now you have to ignore this because this was a news candle and we engulfed it back. So in cases like this, you can also just quickly chart ignoring this candle here. I did a trade here, if you remembered. I took a call on the red candle and I mentioned that my stops will be at the bottom wick. So this was a very typical news candle that lacked selling continuation, because we were supposed to be in that green selling algorithm, isn't it? So once it broke back out of that green, returning back into that magenta, I had my beautiful trade here, some profits you could take, just getting into the action. And I'd helped, I had earlier profits, so I could just take smaller contracts and just capture this profit here. As I was mentioning, the break of this magenta, right? Now, if you didn't catch this, that's absolutely fine, because this was slightly early. There was a little lack of structure as well. Now, if that happens, wait for the retracement. And I mentioned that as well. So don't forget to be looking out for my analysis, intraday, end of day analysis. Draw them in parallel to as I am explaining this right here for you, so you have better understanding of what I'm trying to explain to you vis-a-vis my analysis. So understanding the retracement here, you could have taken a better trade here. Now this was when I overtraded here, because you see there's so much inside candles. So you can wait for structure to start forming even more clearly, and especially when we already, at this point I think, already identified the blue algorithm. So once you identify the blue algorithm, you know that's a stronger algorithm. Just allow the blue to build more liquidity if it wants to head down. Now you see it started forming nested structure, isn't it? This is another nested structure here. You see how the algorithm, once again, dual algorithms, right? Magenta and strengthening into the blue. So once this rejected here, especially of this beautiful resistance that we already charted, right? Don't forget, although this is a bullish control, because it's a resistance, there are sellers at resistances. Now, once this formed, this would have been a beautiful entry. I missed it here because I overtraded here. You remember that? I overtraded here and I missed it here. But what I would have taken would be possibly this trade here, this head here, trying it out. Remember, if this is trending down, you have the opportunity to take puts and manage your risks. This is an ongoing discussion throughout the week, you see from the video here. And more importantly, not just trending down, you also see how it started forming that blue inverse handle. Right, that's sorry, I meant the right nested shoulder. And you see how the green algorithm guided the breakout here to the 5-day moving average. Now at this point here, we already prepared for several scenarios, right? The first will be you have to wait for the retest of the 5-day. Once it retested 5-day, sure, you wait for another structure, because you already seen how that blue algorithm has been controlling the bearish control. And also we saw that pink algorithm here. So this was a good time to take your credit spread, as I explained in the morning context. And you allow the chop to just chop it around here. Now, I called a call here. And only because we broke out of that selling, and only because we had that certainty of 5-day, and we were in the strongest buying continuation structure, this algorithm, this precision algorithm, that helped guide my decision here. And I protected it at structure demands, at that pink. You saw that happening. You have to protect and trade at structure demands. Now thereafter, how do you take a trade here? If it took a credit spread, now this is simple. You allow it to decay, and I took mine here at 260, I think, and it, well, went to 20 cents here. So more than 90% profits just from this particular chop here. So it's quite straightforward, but otherwise, if you wanted to day trade this, just take a look how it started closing cups, and you see how the pink just started building liquidity here. Absolutely beautiful. This could still be 100% trade, maybe around 1 p.m. Maybe. I have to check it out in the options chain. But you do see it's penny perfect right there. So you have to always remember, if you're trying to force a trades, especially within the inside candles, you have to be taking trades, calls near to supports. Now there is a microstructure here I want to pay close attention to, right? Especially when you saw pink continuing to build liquidity here. And once we broke above, you see the double wicks here. This is when I may have taken a call, because I know that pink is controlling the liquidity, and if I fall below pink, I would just stop out and re-enter if there's a need. So this is possible. If you caught this large green candle, you have to protect it, right? And you would have a beautiful move all the way up here. But otherwise, after this large green, I would see this, isn't it? Once again, building liquidity off the pink. And you could take a call here with the pink as your stop. And this would have given you, I think at that time it was the blue buying. I think it was the orange buying here. I'm not sure. I would have to chart this, but there would still be a buying algorithm that you could have based off your pink with a beautiful entry here. Let me draw the pink much nicer right there. Beautiful entry. You could have taken that trade as well. But otherwise, you see, once we closed the cup here at that yellow, we started basing off the pink again, capturing this candle here as well. So you notice it's just pink building liquidity on the way up right there. Now it gets more difficult, you realize, right? The sprouts are just getting shorter, the breakouts are getting shorter. And so this will work better if you already had runners from an earlier trade, and helps you pad your stops in order for you to capture the trades here like that. It's quite straightforward, isn't it? So apart from the technical intricacies of the trades, you have just to be patient, because you remember that, well, I missed this way down, and only because I missed this way down, I could capture this simple trade here, right, and prepare for my stops. So part of missing this trade was also because I overtraded here. This could have been a marvelous trade as well, and taking more profits will help me with the credit spread here. I would have taken more contracts for the credit spread because of that. So you see, you have to learn to chain up your plays throughout the day, and don't be afraid of missing trades. Always prepare 3, 4 setups ahead. Preparing ahead, it's very important. And that's what you need to do.
Hey, how do I export this PDF? Show me how to find the new hire
Real
manual.
quick, can you show me how to... If your coworkers are asking you to repeat yourself all the time, you need Scribe. Go to scribehow.com and download Scribe. It'll make you a how-to guide for any process. Click start and do whatever process you need to explain exactly as you normally would. Then when you're done, click stop. Scribe makes you this automatic step-by-step guide complete with screenshots and text that you can edit and share.
Thanks, Dahlia.
Never repeat yourself at work again. Try Scribe.
Wayfair presents mattresses. Stack up the savings with mattresses starting at just $300, with big deals